so low to the floor. Hello world, Lindsay here, liaison to the senior partners of Blackhorn and Lynx. Let's play CyberHyve.
Pandemonium 2 is a platform game developed by Crystal Dynamics for PlayStation and Microsoft Windows. It is the sequel to Pandemonium. Pandemonium 2 is a psychedelic 2.5D game. Specifically, it renders characters and environments with polygons and uses a 3D camera to create the appearance of 3D, while gameplay is actually on a 2D plane. Players can choose to be either Nikki or Fargus, who each have different specialties, with the option to change for each level. The player character's abilities have been expanded over those in Pandemonium, with the ability to climb ropes, crawl, and pull themselves up ledges. During the quest, players can earn extra lives by collecting treasure. Unique powers collected during gameplay may replace, extend, or add to previous powers, depending on which character is in play and which power has been obtained. The characters handle the unique powers differently. For instance, collecting the fire power allows Nikki to shoot destructive fireballs, while it grants Fargus invincibility and a deadly touch, but requires him to constantly move forward. Machines and equipment are also available throughout the game, although they are tied to certain areas. There are 4 boss stages, set after a block of stages has been completed. Destroying the bosses usually involves small puzzles, such as catapulting fireballs at a flying boss, or surviving the onslaught of a giant mecha boss while balanced on the back of a large, fast-moving tank. Should the player collect plus 80% of treasure in a level, they will have access to the bonus level Border Run, where they must slide along a course collecting treasure, while simultaneously keeping ahead of a pursuing vortex. Failure in Border Run does not cost the player lives. Successfully completing Border Run will result in the player earning at least 1 extra life. The player begins with 4 hit points to represent health. Through bonuses, this can be expanded up to a maximum of 16. To achieve maximum hit points, the player must find one of several life pieces in hidden areas of the game. When all points are lost, the character loses a life and returns to the last checkpoint. When all lives are lost, the game is over. When the magic-infused Comet of Infinite Possibilities is about to pass over Lyr for the first time in 300 years, the inhabitants race to reach the comet in order to make a wish on its powers. Nikki, voiced by Deborah Benelizer, a sassy sorceress, decides that stealing the source of its magic is a quicker way to reach power than study. Her bosom buddy, Fargus, voiced by Martin Gonapolar, a court jester, has gone insane over the years and has a simple plan to touch pretty fire upon reaching the comet. Sid, also voiced by Martin Gonapolar, a sharp-tongued head on a stick and Fargus's only other friend, wishes to get rid of Fargus and get closer to Nikki. But the evil goon Queen Zorska has her sights set on the comet as well. Nikki and Fargus must make it to the comet before she does, lest she fulfill her own morally questionable wishes. The ending of the game varies by which character defeats the final boss. If Nikki succeeds in the quest, she gains control of the universe. If Fargus does, he creates a world in which he is the flowers and the trees, as well as the sun, which makes Sid fume to the point where his head explodes. Reviews for Pandemonium 2 ranged from mixed to positive. The PlayStation version received an average score of 77.11% at GameRankings, based on an aggregate of 9 reviews. Most reviewers found the game had more detailed graphics than the original Pandemonium, as well as being generally more colorful. GameSpot's Lauren Fielder summarized that Pandemonium 2 is a fun and mostly unpredictable platform game, in spite of not being fully 3D. GamePro was more critical of the 2D platforming gameplay, deeming it a niche subgenre which had become very tiresome. The reviewer nonetheless praised the graphics and soundtrack, and said the game was recommended to the few remaining fans of 2D platformers. The 4 reviewers of Electronic Gaming Monthly, by contrast, criticized the cinemas but unanimously applauded the gameplay due to its innovative stage design, balanced challenge, and exciting camera panning. The redesign of the characters was negatively received, in particular, the transformation of Nikki from the adolescent tomboy portrayed in the original Pandemonium into a sultry seductress was seen as an embarrassing effort to appeal to the young male population which dominated the video game market. In their buyer's guide, Electronic Gaming Monthly gave Nikki the 1997 Worst Makeover award, deriding the effort to make Nikki sexier as both transparent and ineffectual. "We're sorry, but we have a hard time getting excited about a heroine who looks as if she spends her Friday nights getting hit on by league bowlers." Dumile created the MF Doom character as an alter ego with a backstory he could reference in his music. The character combines elements from the Marvel Comics supervillain Doctor Doom, Distro, and the Phantom of the Opera. Like Doctor Doom and Phantom, Dumile referred to himself in the third person while in character. His signature mask was similar to that of Doctor Doom, who is depicted rapping on the cover of Dumile's 1999 debut album Operation Doomsday. Dumile wore the mask while performing, and would not be photographed without it, except for short glimpses in videos and in earlier photos with KMD. Later versions of the mask were based on a prop from the 2000 film Gladiator. 96 Academic Hershine Ibana Young argued that, by appropriating the Doctor Doom mask, Dumile positions himself as enemy, not only of the music industry but also of dominant constructions of identity that relegate him as a black man to second-class citizenship. Dumile sometimes sent stand-ins to perform in the mask, which he saw as a logical extension of the concept but angered audiences. Dumile initially claimed that he had lost weight and thus looked and sounded different. At a 2010 show in Toronto, an imposter was booed off stage before being replaced by Dumile. In an interview with The New Yorker, Dumile described himself as the writer and director of the character and that he might send a white dude next. "Whoever plays the character plays the character." In November 2019, during his performance at the Adult Swim Festival, electronic artist Flying Lotus announced that he would be joined on stage by Dumile. Instead, the masked figure who appeared on stage was revealed to be comedian Hannibal Buress. Dumile's involvement in the prank has not been confirmed. Ninhursag, also known as Damgalnuna or Ninmah, was the ancient Sumerian mother goddess of the mountains, and one of the 7 great deities of Sumer. She is principally a fertility goddess. Temple hymn sources identify her as the true and great Lady of Heaven, possibly in relation to her standing on the mountain, and kings of Sumer were nourished by Ninhursag's milk. Sometimes her hair is depicted in an omega shape and at times she wears a horned head dress and tiered skirt, often with bow cases at her shoulders. Frequently she carries a mace or baton surmounted by an omega motif or a derivation, sometimes accompanied by a lion cub on a leash. She is the tutelary deity to several Sumerian leaders. Ninhursag means Lady of the Sacred Mountain, from Sumerian Nin Lady and Ar.sag, Sacred Mountain, foothill, possibly a reference to the site of her temple, the Iker, House of Mountain Deeps, at Eridu. She had many names including Ninmah, Great Queen, Nintu, Lady of Birth, Mama or Mommy, Mother, Aruru, Bilatili, Lady of the Gods, Akkadian. According to legend, her name was changed from Ninmah to Ninhursag by her son Ninurta in order to commemorate his creation of the mountains. As Ninmena, according to a Babylonian investiture ritual, she placed the golden crown on the king in the Iana temple. Some of the names above were once associated with independent goddesses, such as Ninmah and Ninmena, who later became identified and merged with Ninhursag, and myths exist in which the name Ninhursag is not mentioned. Citation needed. Possibly included among the original mother goddesses was Damgalnuna, great wife of the prince, or Damkina, true wife, the consort of the god Enki. The mother goddess had many epithets including Shasura or womb goddess, Tabsat Eli, midwife of the gods, mother of all children, and mother of the gods. In this role she is identified with Ki in the Enuma Elish. She had shrines in both Eridu and Kish. In the legend of Enki and Ninhursag, Ninhursag bore a daughter to Enki called Ninsar, Lady Greenery. Through Enki, Ninsar bore a daughter Ninkara, Lady of the Pasture. Ninkara, in turn, bore Enki a daughter named Utto. Enki then pursued Utto, who was upset because he didn't care for her. Utto, on her aunt's stress Ninhursag's advice, buried Enki's seed in the earth, whereupon 8 plants, the very first, sprung up. Enki, seeing the plants, ate them, and became ill and ate organs of his body. Ninhursag cured him, taking the plants into her body and giving birth to 8 deities: Abu, Nintola, Nintul, Ninsuta, Ninkasai, Nanshi, Azamua, Ninti, and Enshagag. In the text, creator of the Ho, she completed the birth of mankind after the heads had been uncovered by Enki's Ho. In creation texts, Ninma, another name for Ninhursag, acts as a midwife whilst the mother goddess Namu makes different kinds of human individuals from lumps of clay at a feast given by Enki to celebrate the creation of humankind. In biology, and especially in genetics, a mutant is an organism or a new genetic character arising or resulting from an instance of mutation, which is generally an alteration of the DNA sequence of the genome or chromosome of an organism. It is a characteristic that would not be observed naturally in a specimen. The term mutant is also applied to a virus with an alteration in its nucleotide sequence whose genome is in the nuclear genome. The natural occurrence of genetic mutations is integral to the process of evolution. The study of mutants is an integral part of biology. By understanding the effect that a mutation in a gene has, it is possible to establish the normal function of that gene. Mutants arise by mutations occurring in pre-existing genomes as a result of errors of DNA replication or errors of DNA repair. Errors of replication often involve translocation synthesis by a DNA polymerase when it encounters and bypasses a damaged base in the template strand. A DNA damage is an abnormal chemical structure in DNA, such as a strand break or an oxidized base, whereas a mutation, by contrast, is a change in the sequence of standard base pairs. Errors of repair occur when repair processes inaccurately replace a damaged DNA sequence. The DNA repair process microhomology-mediated end joining is particularly error-prone. Although not all mutations have a noticeable phenotypic effect, the common usage of the word mutant is generally a pejorative term, only used for genetically or phenotypically noticeable mutations. Previously, people used the word sport, related to spurt, to refer to abnormal specimens. The scientific usage is broader, referring to any organism differing from the wild type. The word finds its origin in the Latin term mutant, stem of mutans, which means to change. Mutants should not be confused with organisms born with developmental abnormalities, which are caused by errors during morphogenesis. In a developmental abnormality, the DNA of the organism is unchanged and the abnormality cannot be passed on to progeny. Conjoined twins are the result of developmental abnormalities. Chemicals that cause developmental abnormalities are called teratogens. These may also cause mutations, but their effect on development is not related to mutations. Chemicals that induce mutations are called mutagens. Most mutagens are also considered to be carcinogens. Closed-circuit television, CCTV, also known as video surveillance, is the use of video cameras to transmit a signal to a specific place, on a limited set of monitors. It differs from broadcast television in that the signal is not openly transmitted, though it may employ point-to-point, P2P, point-to-multipoint, P2MP, or mesh-wired or wireless links. Even though almost all video cameras fit this definition, the term is most often applied to those used for surveillance in areas that require additional security or ongoing monitoring. Video telephony is seldom called CCTV. Surveillance of the public using CCTV is common in many areas around the world. In recent years, the use of body-worn video cameras has been introduced as a new form of surveillance, often used in law enforcement, with cameras located on a police officer's chest or head. Video surveillance has generated significant debate about balancing its use with individuals' right to privacy even when in public. In industrial plants, CCTV equipment may be used to observe parts of a process from a central control room, for example when the environment is not suitable for humans. CCTV systems may operate continuously or only as required to monitor a particular event. A more advanced form of CCTV, using digital video recorders, DVRs, provides recording for possibly many years, with a variety of quality and performance options and extra features, such as motion detection and email alerts. More recently, decentralized IP cameras, perhaps equipped with megapixel sensors, support recording directly to network-attached storage devices, or internal flash for completely standalone operation. By one estimate, there will be approximately 1 billion surveillance cameras in use worldwide by 2021. About 65% of these cameras are installed in Asia. The growth of CCTV has been slowing in recent years. The deployment of this technology has facilitated significant growth in state surveillance, a substantial rise in the methods of advanced social monitoring and control, and a host of crime prevention measures throughout the world. An early mechanical CCTV system was developed in June 1927 by Russian physicist Leon Theremin, television in the Soviet Union. Originally requested by the Soviet of Labor and Defense, the system consisted of a manually operated scanning transmitting camera and wireless shortwave transmitter and receiver, with a resolution of 100 lines. Having been commandeered by Kliment Voroshilov, Theremin's CCTV system was demonstrated to Joseph Stalin, Semyon Budyonny, and Sergei Orджоникидзе, and subsequently installed in the courtyard of the Moscow Kremlin to monitor approaching visitors. Another early CCTV system was installed by Siemens AG at Test Stand 7 in Peenemünde, Nazi Germany in 1942, for observing the launch of V-2 rockets. In the US, the first commercial closed-circuit television system became available in 1949, called Verican. Very little is known about Verican except it was advertised as not requiring a government permit. The earliest video surveillance systems involved constant monitoring because there was no way to record and store information. The development of reel-to-reel media enabled the recording of surveillance footage. These systems required magnetic tapes to be changed manually, which was a time-consuming, expensive, and unreliable process, with the operator having to manually thread the tape from the tape reel through the recorder onto an empty take-up reel. Due to these shortcomings, video surveillance was not widespread. VCR technology became available in the 1970s, making it easier to record and erase information, and the use of video surveillance became more common. During the 1990s, digital multiplexing was developed, allowing several cameras to record at once, as well as time-lapse and motion-only recording. This saved time and money, which then led to an increase in the use of CCTV. Recently, CCTV technology has been enhanced with a shift toward internet-based products and systems, and other technological developments. Closed-circuit television was used as a form of pay-per-view theater television for sports such as professional boxing and professional wrestling, and from 1964 through 1970, the Indianapolis 500 automobile race. Boxing telecasts were broadcast live to a select number of venues, mostly theaters, where viewers paid for tickets to watch the fight live. The first fight with a closed-circuit telecast was Joe Louis vs. Joe Walcott in 1948. Closed-circuit telecasts peaked in popularity with Muhammad Ali in the 1960s and 1970s, with The Rumble in the Jungle fight drawing 50 million CCTV viewers worldwide in 1974, and the Thrilla in Manila drawing 100 million CCTV viewers worldwide in 1975. In 1985, the WrestleMania I professional wrestling show was seen by over 1 million viewers with this scheme. As late as 1996, the Julio Cesar Chavez vs. Oscar de la Hoya boxing fight had 750,000 viewers. Closed-circuit television was gradually replaced by pay-per-view home cable television in the 1980s and 1990s. Marie Van Britten Brown first pioneered and patented a CCTV home security system, much of the technology of which is still used in home security systems today, U.S. Patent 3,482,037. In September 1968, Olean, New York was the first city in the United States to install video cameras along its main business street in an effort to fight crime. Another early appearance was in 1973 in Times Square in New York City. The NYPD installed it to deter crime in the area. However, crime rates did not appear to drop much due to the cameras. Nevertheless, during the 1980s, video surveillance began to spread across the country, specifically targeting public areas. It was seen as a cheaper way to deter crime compared to increasing the size of the police departments. Some businesses as well, especially those that were prone to theft, began to use video surveillance. From the mid-1990s on, police departments across the country installed an increasing number of cameras in various public spaces, including housing projects, schools, and public parks departments. CCTV later became common in banks and stores to discourage theft, by recording evidence of criminal activity. In 1998, 3,000 CCTV systems were in use in New York City. Experiments in the UK during the 1970s and 1980s, including outdoor CCTV in Bournemouth in 1985, led to several larger trial programs later that decade. The first use by local government was in King's Lynn, Norfolk, in 1987. A 2009 systematic review by researchers from Northeastern University and University of Cambridge used meta-analytic techniques to pool the average effect of CCTV on crime across 41 different studies. The studies included in the meta-analysis used quasi-experimental evaluation designs that involve before and after measures of crime in experimental and control areas. However, several researchers have pointed to methodological problems associated with this research literature. First, researchers have argued that the British car park studies included in the meta-analysis cannot accurately control for the fact that CCTV was introduced simultaneously with a range of other security-related measures. Second, some have noted that, in many of the studies, there may be issues with selection bias since the introduction of CCTV was potentially endogenous to previous crime trends. In particular, the estimated effects may be biased if CCTV is introduced in response to crime trends. It has been argued that problems of selection bias and endogeneity can be addressed by stronger research designs such as randomized controlled trials in natural experiments. A 2017 review published in Journal of Scandinavian Studies in Criminology and Crime Prevention compiles 7 studies that use such research designs. The studies included in the review found that CCTV reduced crime by 24 to 28% in public streets and urban subway stations. It also found that CCTV could decrease unruly behavior in football stadiums and theft in supermarkets/mass merchant stores. However, there was no evidence of CCTV having desirable effects in parking facilities or suburban subway stations. Furthermore, the review indicates that CCTV is more effective in preventing property crimes than in violent crimes. Closed-circuit television cameras captured the perpetrator of the Washington Navy Yard shooting during his rampage. Another question in the effectiveness of CCTV for policing is around uptime of the system. In 2013, City of Philadelphia auditor found that the $15 million system was operational only 32% of the time. There is strong anecdotal evidence that CCTV aids in detection and conviction of offenders. For example, UK police forces routinely seek CCTV recordings after crimes. Moreover, CCTV has played a crucial role in tracing the movements of suspects or victims and is widely regarded by anti-terrorist officers as a fundamental tool in tracking terrorist suspects. Large-scale CCTV installations have played a key part of the defenses against terrorism since the 1970s. Cameras have also been installed on public transport in the hope of deterring crime. A more open question is whether most CCTV is cost-effective. While low-quality domestic kits are cheap, the professional installation and maintenance of high-definition CCTV is expensive. Gill and Spriggs did a cost-effectiveness analysis, CEA, of CCTV in crime prevention that showed little monetary saving with the installation of CCTV, as most of the crimes prevented resulted in little monetary loss. Critics, however, noted that benefits of non-monetary value cannot be captured in a traditional cost-effectiveness analysis and were omitted from their study. A 2008 report by UK police chiefs concluded that only 3% of crimes were solved by CCTV. In London, a Metropolitan Police report showed that in 2008 only 1 crime was solved per 1,000 cameras. In some cases, CCTV cameras have become a target of attacks themselves. Cities such as Manchester in the UK are using DVR-based technology to improve accessibility for crime prevention. In October 2009, an Internet Eyes website was announced which would pay members of the public to view CCTV camera images from their homes and report any crimes they witnessed. The site aimed to add more eyes to cameras which might be insufficiently monitored. Civil liberties campaigners criticized the idea as a distasteful and a worrying development. In 2013, Oaxaca hired deaf police officers to lip-read conversations to uncover criminal conspiracies. In Singapore, since 2012, thousands of CCTV cameras have helped deter loan sharks, nab litter bugs, and stop illegal parking, according to government figures. A dragon is a large, serpentine, legendary creature that appears in the folklore of many cultures worldwide. Beliefs about dragons vary considerably through regions, but dragons in Western cultures since the High Middle Ages have often been depicted as winged, horned, four-legged, and capable of breathing fire. Dragons in Eastern cultures are usually depicted as wingless, four-legged, serpentine creatures with above-average intelligence. Commonalities between dragons' traits are often a hybridization of feline, avian, and reptilian features, and may include snake-like features, reptilian scaly skin, 4 legs with 3 or 4 toes on each, spinal nodes running down the back, a tail, and a serrated jaw with rows of teeth. Several modern scholars believe huge extinct or migrating crocodiles bear the closest resemblance, especially when encountered in forested or swampy areas, and are most likely the template of modern dragon imagery. In Egyptian mythology, Apep is a giant serpentine creature who resides in the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. 2425. The Bremner Rhind Papyrus, written in around 310 BC, preserves an account of a much older Egyptian tradition that the setting of the sun is caused by Ra descending to the Duat to battle Apep. In some accounts, Apep is as long as the height of 8 men with a head made of flint. Thunderstorms and earthquakes were thought to be caused by Apep's roar, and solar eclipses were thought to be the result of Apep attacking Ra during the daytime. In some myths, Apep is slain by the god Set. Ni-Ikau is another giant serpent who guards the Duat and aided Ra in his battle against Apep. Ni-Ikau was so massive in some stories that the entire earth was believed to rest atop his coils. Dinwan is a giant serpent mentioned in the pyramid texts whose body was made of fire and who ignited a conflagration that nearly destroyed all the gods of the Egyptian pantheon. He was ultimately defeated by the pharaoh, a victory which affirmed the pharaoh's divine right to rule. The Ouroboros was a well-known Egyptian symbol of a serpent swallowing its own tail. The precursor to the Ouroboros was the many-faced, a serpent with 5 heads, who, according to the Amduat, the oldest surviving book of the afterlife, was said to coil around the corpse of the sun god Ra protectively. The earliest surviving depiction of a true Ouroboros comes from the gilded shrines in the tomb of Tutankhamun. In the early centuries AD, the Ouroboros was adopted as a symbol by Gnostic Christians, and chapter 136 of the Pistis Sophia, an early Gnostic text, describes a great dragon whose tail is in its mouth. In medieval alchemy, the Ouroboros became a typical Western dragon with wings, legs, and a tail. A famous image of the dragon gnawing on its tail from the 11th century Codex Martianus was copied in numerous works on alchemy. In philosophy, the absurd refers to the conflict between the human tendency to seek inherent value and meaning in life, and the human inability to find these with any certainty. The universe and the human mind do not each separately cause the absurd, rather, the absurd arises by the contradictory nature of the two existing simultaneously. The absurdist philosopher Albert Camus stated that individuals should embrace the absurd condition of human existence. Absurdism shares some concepts, and a common theoretical template, with existentialism and nihilism. It has its origins in the work of the 19th century Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, who chose to confront the crisis that humans face with the absurd by developing his own existentialist philosophy. Absurdism as a belief system was born of the European existentialist movement that ensued, specifically when Camus rejected certain aspects of that philosophical line of thought and published his essay The Myth of Sisyphus. The aftermath of World War II provided the social environment that stimulated absurdist views and allowed for their popular development, especially in the devastated country of France. A group of people who slide, between different Earths in parallel universes via a vortex-like wormhole, activated by a handheld timer device. While the slide technology was intended to return them to their home universe, their premature use of the timer to escape a dangerous situation has caused the timer to lose track of the coordinates for their home universe. Now, they are forced to slide between universes, spending anywhere from minutes to months there, waiting for the timer to count down to the next time they can open a vortex to a new universe, hoping it is their original one. Failing to use the vortex to slide at that point would mean they would be stuck in that universe for nearly 3 decades until they can open the vortex again. While waiting for the timer countdown, the sliders frequently explore the nature of the alternate universe and often become caught up in events of that world. Some of these universes are based on alternate timelines in which certain historical events happened differently from the history they know, such as one in which penicillin was never discovered or a world on which America had lost the Revolutionary War, while other worlds have entirely novel histories, such as one where time flowed in reverse, or where dinosaurs never became extinct. The history of brain, computer interfaces, keys, starts with Hans Berger's discovery of the electrical activity of the human brain and the development of electroencephalography, EEG. In 1924, Berger was the first to record human brain activity by means of EEG. Berger was able to identify oscillatory activity, such as Berger's wave or the alpha wave, 8 to 13 Hz, by analyzing EEG traces. Berger's first recording device was very rudimentary. He inserted silver wires under the scalps of his patients. These were later replaced by silver foils attached to the patient's head by rubber bandages. Berger connected these sensors to a Lippmann capillary electrometer, with disappointing results. However, more sophisticated measuring devices, such as the Siemens double-coil recording galvanometer, which displayed electric voltages as small as 1/10,000th of a volt, led to success. Berger analyzed the interrelation of alternations in his EEG wave diagrams with brain diseases. EEGs permitted completely new possibilities for the research of human brain activities. Although the term had not yet been coined, one of the earliest examples of a working brain-machine interface was the piece Music for Solo Performer, 1965, by the American composer Alvin Lucier. The piece makes use of EEG and analog signal processing hardware, filters, amplifiers, and a mixing board, to stimulate acoustic percussion instruments. To perform the piece, one must produce alpha waves and thereby play the various percussion instruments via loudspeakers which are placed near or directly on the instruments themselves. UCLA professor Jacques Vidal coined the term BCI and produced the first peer-reviewed publications on this topic. Vidal is widely recognized as the inventor of keys in the BCI community, as reflected in numerous peer-reviewed articles reviewing and discussing the field. Example: a review pointed out that Vidal's 1973 paper stated the BCI challenge of controlling external objects using EEG signals, and especially use of contingent negative variation, CNV, potential as a challenge for BCI control. The 1977 experiment Vidal described was the first application of BCI after his 1973 BCI challenge. It was a non-invasive EEG, actually visual evoked potentials, VEP, control of a cursor-like graphical object on a computer screen. The demonstration was movement in a maze. After his early contributions, Vidal was not active in BCI research, nor BCI events such as conferences, for many years. In 2011, however, he gave a lecture in Graz, Austria, supported by the Future BNCI project, presenting the first BCI, which earned a standing ovation. Vidal was joined by his wife, Larisse Vidal, who previously worked with him at UCLA on his first BCI project. In 1988, a report was given on non-invasive EEG control of a physical object, a robot. The experiment described was EEG control of multiple start-stop-restart of the robot movement, along an arbitrary trajectory defined by a line drawn on a floor. The line following behavior was the default robot behavior, utilizing autonomous intelligence and autonomous source of energy. This 1988 report, written by Stevo Bozinovsky, Mihail Sestakov, and Liljana Bozinovska, was the first one about a robot control using EEG. In 1990, a report was given on a closed-loop, bidirectional adaptive BCI controlling computer buzzer by an anticipatory brain potential, the contingent negative variation, CNV, potential. The experiment described how an expectation state of the brain, manifested by CNV, controls in a feedback loop the S2 buzzer in the S1-S2 CNV paradigm. The obtained cognitive wave representing the expectation learning in the brain is named electroexpectogram, EXG. The CNV brain potential was part of the BCI challenge presented by Vidal in his 1973 paper. Studies in 2010s suggested the potential ability of neural stimulation to restore functional connectively and associated behaviors through modulation of molecular mechanisms of synaptic efficacy. This opened the door for the concept that BCI technologies may be able to restore function in addition to enabling functionality. Since 2013, DARPA has funded BCI technology through the BRAIN Initiative, which has supported work out of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Paradromics, Brown, and Synchron, among others. Technopaganism is the use of modern technology or music within neopaganism and magical ritual. This can include the substitution of technology for traditional magical tools, such as using their oven for a hearth, keeping a disc of shadows instead of a book of shadows, and using a laser pointer as a wand. In other practice, technology is the target of the magical work, such as the use of stones and other charms to help improve the performance of mundane items or online role-playing avatars. Modern tribal and urban primitive movements such as urban shamanism and rave culture are associated with electronic dance music. Technopaganism deals with spiritual and magical facets of technology and technological society. Associated with this is the use of technological metaphors, most often computer or telecommunications metaphors, to describe spiritual phenomena, as well as the use of symbolism from popular culture in spiritual contexts. When used to describe belief systems, technopaganism focuses on the spiritual side of technology. This can include the belief that technological items and artifacts of modern living, such as buildings, roads, parks, cars, and other such items, have pseudo-spirits, or totem spirits, of their own. This also extends to cities. One belief that faces substantial objections is that the internet itself is attaining a unique spirit. Indeed, it is the stated objective of the creator of VRML to bring about the merging of the spiritual world with the physical world. Ancient peoples across the Near East believed in creatures similar to what modern people call dragons. These ancient peoples were unaware of the existence of dinosaurs or similar creatures in the distant past. References to dragons of both benevolent and malevolent characters occur throughout ancient Mesopotamian literature. In Sumerian poetry, great kings are often compared to the Yuzungal, a gigantic, serpentine monster. A draconic creature with the forparts of a lion and the hind legs, tail, and wings of a bird appears in Mesopotamian artwork from the Akkadian period, c. 2334 to 2154 BC, until the Neo-Babylonian period, 626 BC. 539 BC. The dragon is usually shown with its mouth open. It may have been known as the Umu, Nairu, which means roaring weather beast, and may have been associated with the god Ishkur, Hadad. A slightly different lion dragon with two horns and the tail of a scorpion appears in art from the Neo-Assyrian period, 911 BC, 609 BC. A relief probably commissioned by Sennacherib shows the gods Ashur, Sin, and Adad standing on its back. Another draconic creature with horns, the body and neck of a snake, the forelegs of a lion, and the hind legs of a bird appears in Mesopotamian art from the Akkadian period until the Hellenistic period, 323 BC, 31 BC. This creature, known in Akkadian as the Muyu, meaning furious serpent, was used as a symbol for particular deities and also as a general protective emblem. It seems to have originally been the attendant of the underworld god Ninazu, but later became the attendant to the Hurrian storm god Tishpak, as well as, later, Ninazu's son Ningishzida, the Babylonian national god Marduk, the scribal god Nabu, and the Assyrian national god Ashur. Scholars disagree regarding the appearance of Tiamat, the Babylonian goddess personifying primeval chaos slain by Marduk in the Babylonian creation epic Enuma Elish. She was traditionally regarded by scholars as having had the form of a giant serpent, but several scholars have pointed out that this shape cannot be imputed to Tiamat with certainty, and she seems to have at least sometimes been regarded as anthropomorphic. Nonetheless, in some texts, she seems to be described with horns, a tail, and a hide that no weapon can penetrate, all features which suggest she was conceived as some form of dragoness. Social constructionism is a theory of knowledge in sociology and communication theory that examines the development of jointly constructed understandings of the world that form the basis for shared assumptions about reality. The theory centers on the notion that meanings are developed in coordination with others rather than separately within each individual. It has often been characterized as neo-Marxian or also as a neo-Kantian theory, in that social constructionism replaces the transcendental subject with a concept of society that is at the same time descriptive and normative. While some social constructs are obvious, for instance money or the concept of currency, in that people have agreed to give it importance/value, others are controversial and hotly debated, such as the concept of self/self-identity. This articulates the view that people in society construct ideas or concepts that may not exist without the existence of people or language to validate those concepts. There are weak and strong social constructs. Weak social constructs rely on brute facts, facts that are not socially constructed, such as, arguably, facts about physical particles, or institutional facts, which are formed from social conventions. It has been objected that strong social constructionism undermines the foundation of science as the pursuit of objectivity and, as a theory, defies any attempt at falsifying it. Symbolic interactionism is a sociological theory that develops from practical considerations and alludes to particular effects of communication and interaction in people to make images and normal implications, for deduction and correspondence with others. According to Machenese, symbolic interactionism is a framework for building theory that sees society as the product of everyday interactions of individuals. In other words, it is a frame of reference to better understand how individuals interact with one another to create symbolic worlds, and in return, how these worlds shape individual behaviors. It is a framework that helps understand how society is preserved and created through repeated interactions between individuals. The interpretation process that occurs between interactions helps create and recreate meaning. It is the shared understanding and interpretations of meaning that affect the interaction between individuals. Individuals act on the premise of a shared understanding of meaning within their social context. Thus, interaction and behavior is framed through the shared meaning that objects and concepts have attached to them. From this view, people live in both natural and symbolic environments. Symbolic interactionism comes from a sociological perspective which developed around the middle of the 20th century and that continues to be influential in some areas of the discipline. It is particularly important in microsociology and social psychology. It is derived from the American philosophy of pragmatism and particularly from the work of George Herbert Mead, as a pragmatic method to interpret social interactions. R. Collins views symbolic interactionism as studying the way the social world is created through interaction between individuals and their environment.